How do we find the coordinates of these particular parametric equations? Well, first, let's write them in a more familiar form. We'll notice that both of these equations have a variable t right here. But what we want to do instead is to think about it the following way. Each of these can be rewritten without the t. So the first one as an example, we can just think about it as x equals 2t plus 1. The second one, we can do the same thing to that as well. We could just rewrite that as y equals t squared plus 2. So now let's find the coordinates of this function. Each coordinate is going to change depending on what t we're using. So let's say we started with 0, 1, 2, and 3. And we wanted to find the coordinates of each of these. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each of the t values, substitute it in for our t on each of the equations, and that's going to give us our coordinate. So on the first one, we'll try x equals, now we have 2 times t, but t is 0. So we're going to say 2 times 0 and then plus 1. So remember that 2 times 0 is 0, and if we add 1 to that, that's going to give us 1. So let's find some more coordinates. We're going to continue to substitute values of t in to get our coordinates. So let's say we try the next one here. So this x coordinate, we would do 2 times t, but remember again, t in this case is 1, so we'll do 2 times 1 plus 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So in this case, we end up with 3 as the x coordinate. And let's go ahead and rewrite that. So we have x equals 3. Alright, so let's do this value now. Remember, t is 2 here, so we're going to write x equals, instead of 2 times t, it's going to be 2 times 2, and we still have that plus 1 as a part of our equation. So when we work this out, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 plus 1 is 5, so we're going to write down that x is equal to 5. So let's do our next one here. So t is 3, so we're going to write here x equals 2. Instead of t, it'll be 2 times 3, and then still plus 1 here. So 2 times 3 is 6, 6 plus 1 is 7. So in this case, our x value is 7. So we have all the x's. Now let's see if we can get these y values. So we'll do the same thing here. We're going to substitute our t values. And so we'll have y equals, instead of t squared, it's going to be 0 squared. So we'll put here 0 squared. And we still have plus 2. So 0 squared is 0, plus 2 is 2. So in this case, we're going to have the y coordinate as y equals 2. So the next one here, we're going to substitute 1 for our t value. So we'll end up with y equals, instead of t squared, is going to be 1 squared, still plus 2. So 1 squared plus 2. So 1 squared is 1. Add 2 to that. That's going to give us 3. So in this case, our y value is 3. So on this next one, t equals 2. So how's it going to work out? Well, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say y equals, instead of t squared, it's going to be 2 squared plus 2. And 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. So we'll have here y equals 6. So now let's do the last one here where t equals 3. So y equals, instead of t squared, we're going to put 3 squared and then plus 2. So 3 squared, remember, is 9, and 9 plus 2 is 11, so y equals 11. So now we have enough information to write the coordinates. So at t equals 0, we're going to have the coordinate where x is 1 and y is 2. At t equals 1, the x and the y coordinate are both 3. At t equals 2, the x and the y coordinate are 5 and 6. And at t equals 3, our coordinate is going to be 7, 11. So those are our x and y coordinates. So what would it look like if we plotted the points? This is what it would look like. And of course, if we connected them, then this is what it would look like. So it looks like we're going to end up with a piece of a parabola. And we can tell because if we connected everything together, if we went and got additional values of t, we would end up with this graph. So we'd end up with that green piece plus the red piece there to make a whole parabola graph. So here's one for you to try. See if you can come up with the coordinate here. Pause it and see what would happen. Alright, so if we're going to work this out, we're going to substitute 3 for our t value. And remember, that means that we're going to replace the t in both equations with 3 in this case. So it's x equals 1 minus 3 times, instead of t, remember we have 3, so it'll be 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, so this is basically the same as x equals 1 minus 9. And if we subtract that, 1 minus 9 gives us a negative 8. So let's find the next coordinate. We're going to substitute our t here with 3. So we'll have y equals, instead of t squared, it's going to be 3 squared minus 2. So 3 squared is basically 9, so we're going to have y equals 9 minus 2. 9 minus 2 is 7, so we'll have y equals 7. And so we put the x and the y together to make our coordinate. So that means that our coordinate is going to end up being negative 8, comma, 7.